Black girl spent her last $8 helping Hell's Angel. Next day, 100 bikers delivered a life-changing gift. The sound came first, low, steady, and impossible to ignore. Within seconds it grew louder, a deep rumble that rolled through Brookside Avenue like thunder. Curtains lifted, doors opened, and people stepped onto porches, their faces painted with confusion and fear. A line of motorcycles turned the corner, chrome flashing in the morning light, engines growling in unison. There were not 10, there were not 20. There were 100. At the far end of the street, Malikah Brown stood frozen on her porch, clutching her daughter Layla's small hand. Her heart thudded against her ribs as the roar echoed off the narrow houses. Layla's eyes were wide with wonder, but Malikah's were full of dread. She could not understand why this army of bikers had come to her quiet street. For a moment, her mind rushed back to the night before. The fluorescent lights of the gas station, the stranger who had fallen to the ground, and her trembling hand holding a small bottle of aspirin she bought with her last $8. Now, as the motorcycles came to a stop in front of her house, the air thickened with silence. Neighbors whispered from their yards, phones raised to capture whatever was about to happen. Malikah held her breath as one of the riders stepped forward, tall and broad, leather jacket creaking as he moved. He reached for his helmet, lifted it slowly, and when the sunlight hit his face, her eyes widened. It was Ryder Cole, the man whose life she had saved. Before we see what happens next, make sure you have liked the video and subscribed. Stories like this deserve to be heard. The morning before everything changed began like every other one on Brookside Avenue, with the soft hum of old refrigerators, creaking pipes, and the smell of instant coffee that barely masked exhaustion. Malikah Brown stood by the window of her small kitchen, counting the last few bills in her hand. $8. That was all she had left until payday. She folded them neatly, slipped them into her worn wallet, and took a deep breath before waking her daughter. "Come on, Layla, time for school," she said gently. Layla, only 8, jumped out of bed with that kind of joy only children carry, unaware of how fragile things really were. She talked about her dreams, her favorite cartoons, and how she wanted pancakes for breakfast. Malikah smiled, hiding the sting in her chest. Pancakes needed eggs, milk, and flour, things she could not afford today. Instead, she poured the last of the cereal into a bowl, pretending it was a special treat. Their small apartment was filled with second-hand furniture, faded photos, and hope stitched into every corner. Life on Brookside Avenue was never easy. The neighbors were kind, but everyone had their own quiet battles, late rent, overdue bills, and jobs that barely kept the lights on. Yet somehow they managed to smile, to wave, to share whatever little they had. By 7:30, Malikah had dropped Layla off at school and started her shift at Rosie's Diner, a small cafe at the corner. She wiped tables, took orders, and smiled at customers who never noticed the fatigue behind her eyes. Her manager had already cut her hours again, saying business was slow. She nodded politely, even though she knew it meant another week of choosing between groceries and electricity. Between serving coffee and cleaning counters, Malikah often caught herself staring out the window. She watched people rushing to work, holding phones, wearing suits, looking like they belonged somewhere. She wondered when life had become about survival instead of living. But even in those thoughts, she did not let bitterness grow. She still refilled cups without being asked, still left extra napkins for the old man who came every morning, still smiled when a customer forgot to tip. That night, as she closed up, she glanced at the faded "Help Wanted" signs along the block. None paid better. None came with stability. She pulled her coat tighter and whispered to herself, not in complaint but in quiet reflection. If only kindness paid the bills. The night was quiet on Brookside Avenue, the kind of quiet that made every small sound echo. Malikah Brown drove slowly, her old sedan humming as she pulled into the corner gas station. Her last $8 weighed heavily in her pocket. It was enough for Layla's breakfast, just enough, but she could not stretch it any further. The streetlights flickered above, casting long shadows across empty sidewalks. As she stepped out of the car, the low growl of an approaching motorcycle cut through the silence. One bike, gleaming under the dim light, slowed as it neared the pumps. Malikah noticed the rider wobble, then saw him collapse onto the asphalt. Panic surged through her. No one moved. People froze, unsure what to do. Without thinking, Malikah ran toward him. "Someone call 911!" she shouted, dropping to her knees beside him. His face was pale, gray around the edges, and he was barely breathing. She pressed her fingers to his neck, checking for a pulse. Her heart pounded harder than his, but she did not let fear take over. This man needed help. Now. She looked around, her eyes scanning the shelves, and grabbed the only thing that could help: aspirin. $8. Her last $8. She didn't hesitate. She ran to the cashier, who hesitated when Malikah handed over the money. "Please," Malikah said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. "It is life or death. I do not have anything else." The cashier nodded, accepting the bills, and Malikah rushed back. Kneeling beside the man, she administered the aspirin as best she could and kept his head steady. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Help is coming. You will be okay." The ambulance lights flashed in the distance, growing closer, and Malikah stayed by his side until the paramedics arrived. In the chaos, she barely noticed a small silver biker ring slip from his finger and fall into her palm. It was cold against her skin, but she did not think about it at the time. As the sirens faded into the night, Malikah walked back to her car, her body aching and her hands trembling. Her wallet was empty, her stomach rumbling, but there was relief mixed with exhaustion. She had spent her last money, risked her safety, and acted without hesitation. Tonight, she saved a life, and somehow that was enough. She glanced down the empty street, Layla's breakfast forgotten for a moment in her mind. Malikah did not know what the morning would bring, but she knew she had done the right thing. And for a single fleeting instant, that made everything else seem lighter. Morning light filtered through the small blinds of Malikah Brown's apartment. The aroma of coffee did not reach her, because she barely had time to breathe before the whispers started in Brookside Avenue. Rumors traveled faster than the morning sun. Some neighbors shook their heads, muttering under their breath about the criminal-looking man she had helped the night before. A few even laughed quietly, judging what they did not understand. Inside the apartment, Layla stood by the fridge with a crayon in her small hand. She had drawn a bright red heart and written in uneven letters, "Mom's a hero." Malikah's lips curved into a tired smile. Her heart swelled, but worry tugged at her chest. People could judge, gossip, and misunderstand, but to her little girl, she had done something meaningful. That thought alone made the sleepless night and empty wallet feel worthwhile. Malikah kissed Layla's forehead and got ready for work, trying to shake off the heavy feeling in her stomach. Her cafe shift was short, her hands tired from folding napkins and wiping tables, but she kept her head down and smiled when customers ordered. She did not talk about last night. Not yet, she did not want pity. By midday, a low rumble rolled through the streets. At first, Malikah thought it was distant thunder, but then the vibration shook the cafe dishes. Cups rattled and customers froze mid-bite. Outside, people began to run to their windows, and whispers of confusion turned to shouts of alarm. One by one, motorcycles appeared at the end of Brookside Avenue. First a handful, then dozens, and finally, a staggering 100 bikes roared down the street, engines growling like a storm in motion. Chrome gleamed under the bright sun, and leather vests reflected light like shields. They parked in precise rows, filling the avenue from end to end. Neighbors scrambled onto their porches, phones held high, recording every second. Fear spread quickly. Rumors grew. "They are here for trouble." What did she do? People gasped and pointed, unsure whether to hide or flee. Malikah's heart raced. She dropped her cleaning cloth and ran, weaving through startled pedestrians. Her mind spun with worry, but one thought pierced through. Layla. She darted toward her apartment, reaching the doorway just as her daughter pressed her tiny hands against the window, eyes wide and scared. The roar of engines filled the air, vibrating in her chest. Malikah took a deep breath, gripping Layla's hand tightly. The world outside seemed surreal, almost like a nightmare she could not wake from. Every motorcycle parked, every helmeted rider staring, sent a shiver down her spine. She did not understand why this had happened. All she knew was that she had helped someone in need last night, and now the consequences had arrived, massive and overwhelming, just outside her front door. The bikers dismounted, one by one, their movements calm and deliberate. No shouting, no chaos, just a quiet confidence that made the rumble of engines fade into the background. Leather boots hit the pavement in perfect rhythm. Malikah Brown clutched Layla's hand, her heart pounding so loudly she feared he might hear it from where he stood. Then he stepped forward. Ryder Cole removed his helmet, and Malikah froze. She knew that face, that intense, watchful gaze. The same man who had collapsed at the gas station, who had been fighting for his life while she had spent her last $8 to help him. Now he walked with steady strength, every step purposeful, completely recovered. Ryder smiled, a mixture of warmth and gratitude in his eyes. "Malikah," he said, his voice carrying across the street. "I do not even know where to start. You saved my life last night. That moment. It could have ended very differently. But you did not hesitate. You acted even when it cost you everything." Malikah felt her throat tighten. She had not thought about recognition, had not imagined any of this. She had only wanted to make sure someone survived. And now, the man she had saved was standing before her, calm and strong, telling the truth about her courage. "I am not just the man you saw last night," Ryder continued, gesturing to the bikers around him. "I founded the Phoenix Hands Foundation. We have spent years helping families who are struggling, people who have nowhere else to turn. Those families need hope, and hope is what you showed me." He paused, looking out at the crowd of neighbors who had been frozen in fear just moments before. "I know what it feels like to be at the edge, to feel like the world has nothing left for you. Once I was homeless. I had nothing, but someone reached out and changed my life with a single act of kindness. That act stayed with me, and I have spent my life paying it forward." Malikah blinked, trying to absorb the words. The man she had helped, someone who had seemed dangerous, intimidating, almost untouchable, was now her savior. The emotional reversal hit her in a wave. Her knees weak as disbelief and gratitude collided inside her. Ryder's team moved forward, rolling out a table with neat precision. On it lay a thick envelope with a check for $25,000, an official letter offering Malikah a position as community outreach coordinator, and a deed for a brand new community center in Brookside Avenue, Brown Haven. The crowd began to soften. Applause started slowly, tentative at first, then building into a roar of admiration. Neighbors whispered to each other, eyes wide, shaking their heads in disbelief. Malikah felt every gaze, every finger pointing not in judgment, but in awe of the woman who had acted with courage when others would have turned away. Ryder stepped closer, looking directly at Malikah. "You showed the world what it means to care without expectation, to act without hesitation. That is why you are exactly who we have been looking for." Layla tugged at her mother's sleeve, wide-eyed. Malikah crouched down, wrapping her arms around her daughter, letting the magnitude of the moment wash over her. She had thought she was giving last night. She had thought she was alone in her struggle. But in truth, her small act of kindness had created a ripple that could not be contained. The bikers remained silent, a respectful audience to the life-changing moment unfolding on Brookside Avenue. Malikah could barely speak, overwhelmed by gratitude and shock. Ryder smiled again, handing her the envelope. "For rent, for bills, for whatever you need. But there is more. The community center, the Brown Haven, it is yours to lead, to help people who need it most, just like you helped me." The street erupted in applause. Malikah's eyes filled with tears, Layla beside her smiling and clapping. What had seemed like fear only moments ago now transformed into hope, unity, and gratitude. The impossible had become reality, and the woman who had lived day to day in struggle now held the power to change lives, not just hers, but everyone around her. Ryder nodded toward the bikers. "This is how the world changes. Not with fear, not with judgment, but with kindness. One choice, one small action at a time." Malikah held the check, the letter, and the deed in her hands, feeling the weight of it all. Her heart still raced, but it was no longer out of panic. It was anticipation, excitement, and hope. The impossible had arrived at her doorstep, and she had earned it simply by seeing a person in need and choosing to act. Layla hugged her tightly. "Mommy, we are going to help so many people." "Yes, baby," Malikah whispered. "And it all starts with us." The street, once tense and filled with fear, now buzzed with a new energy. Neighbors watched in awe, some wiping tears from their eyes, others smiling for the first time in a long while. Malikah realized that this moment was bigger than her, bigger than Brookside Avenue. It was proof that a single act of courage could ignite a chain reaction of hope, change, and love. Ryder gave her one last look. "You saved me when I needed it most. Now you get to save others." Malikah squeezed Layla's hand, her heart full. The ripple had started, and there was no turning back. The journey of transformation, community, and compassion had just begun. Before we move forward, make sure you have liked this video and subscribed to the channel. Stories like Malikah's deserve to be shared. Days passed, and Brookside Avenue was unrecognizable. Where tension and whispers had once filled the streets, there was now movement, laughter, and a sense of purpose. Neighbors worked together, painting walls, planting flowers, and clearing debris around the construction site of Brown Haven. News cameras captured every moment, filming the revival of a neighborhood that had once struggled in quiet desperation. People spoke excitedly, sharing smiles and stories, their hands busy with hammers, paintbrushes, and wheelbarrows. Malikah Brown walked among them, carrying boxes of supplies and guiding volunteers with a calm authority she had never known she possessed. Her life had shifted completely. Once she had worried whether she could afford Layla's breakfast or keep a roof over their heads. Now, as the community outreach coordinator for Phoenix Hands Foundation, she had the resources and platform to make a lasting difference. Each family she helped reminded her of that night at the gas station. And each act of kindness she could now extend felt like a direct continuation of the choice she had made with her last $8. Every morning, Malikah walked Layla to school, holding her daughter's hand and feeling a peace she had not known in years. Layla skipped ahead sometimes, backpack bouncing, her laughter ringing out over the avenue. The little girl who once hid her hunger behind a bright smile was now thriving, her confidence growing alongside her mother's. Malikah's heart swelled with pride as she watched her daughter navigate the world with optimism and courage. The community that had once pitied Malikah now looked to her for inspiration. People greeted her warmly, their respect clear in the way they paused to thank her or ask for guidance. She carried herself differently, not because of the recognition, but because she understood the power of seeing someone in need and choosing action over fear. Ryder Cole visited occasionally, never intruding, but always present. He would show up with a quiet nod, a reassuring smile, or a small gesture of support. Their friendship was unspoken, built entirely on shared gratitude and respect. Malikah had saved his life, and he now quietly watched her save the lives of countless others. Inside Brown Haven, Malikah's days were full but deeply rewarding. She coordinated food drives, organized school supplies for children, and met with single mothers to discuss job training and support options. Her laughter mingled with volunteers as they prepared meals, sorted donations, and decorated the center. Each act of service reinforced the ripple she had started the night she chose to act with her last $8. A visual reminder of that decision followed her everywhere. Layla's simple drawing on the fridge at their old apartment, where she had written "Mom's a hero," was now framed and hung inside Brown Haven. Every child who walked past it, every parent who noticed it, saw a symbol of courage, compassion, and the incredible impact a single act could have. Neighbors and families from Brookside Avenue often stopped by, not just for assistance, but to share stories. They spoke of challenges overcome, meals shared, and opportunities created because Malikah had refused to turn away when someone needed help. She listened, encouraged, and celebrated each success, knowing that change was not just about one family, but about creating a chain reaction that would echo through the neighborhood for years to come. Her mornings began early, often before the sun rose, and ended with the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had made a tangible difference. Even simple gestures, a conversation with a struggling parent, an encouraging word to a teenager, or a warm meal for an elderly resident, felt monumental. She understood that true transformation did not always come with headlines or viral videos, but in the smiles of people who could now see a better path for themselves. Layla sometimes watched her mother in awe, noticing how people gravitated toward Malikah, how respect and warmth followed her presence. She leaned against her mother, whispering, "I want to help too, Mommy." And Malikah would smile, feeling the circle of kindness she had started expand to the next generation. Each day reinforced a truth she had learned long ago. Kindness could change lives, and even the smallest decision, like spending her last $8 to help a stranger, could ignite a movement of hope. Ryder's occasional visits reminded her that gratitude could strengthen bonds without words, that lives could intertwine through acts of compassion. Brookside Avenue had become more than a neighborhood. It had become a living testament to what happens when people choose generosity over fear. And in the heart of it all stood Malikah Brown, a single mother who had refused to turn away, proving that even in the darkest moments, one person's courage could illuminate a whole community. Before we continue to see how Malikah's journey unfolds, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Every story of kindness like this deserves to inspire the world. Malikah stood by the window of Brown Haven, watching the sun glint off the chrome of motorcycles as Ryder Cole and his team rode past. The street, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now carried the hum of purpose and connection. Children waved, neighbors smiled, and the world outside reflected the transformation she had helped create. Every ripple of change reminded her of that night at the gas station, when a single choice had set everything in motion. She held Layla close, feeling the warmth of her daughter's small arms around her waist. "Mom, you saved him." "And he saved us," Layla whispered, her voice full of awe and love. Malikah's eyes filled with tears, but her smile was steady, glowing with the pride of knowing that one act of kindness had created a lasting legacy. The quiet of the moment carried a powerful truth. It costs nothing to be kind, but sometimes kindness pays back more than money ever could. Malikah had learned that giving from the heart could change lives, build communities, and bridge gaps no one thought possible. The chain of compassion stretched further than she had ever imagined, touching families, strangers, and even herself in ways she could not have foreseen. As the motorcycles disappeared into the horizon, Malikah felt a sense of peace and purpose. She had begun as a mother with $8 and a choice, and she had grown into a woman whose courage and compassion could inspire an entire neighborhood. If Malikah's story moved you, share this video, hit the like button, and subscribe, because sometimes the smallest kindness deserves the biggest voice.